Yo, welcome to now the 4th episode of Champaign Papis. As always, I'm Joe Longo.
And I am Mark Aguzzi. We want to welcome you back to, like Joe said, the 4th episode of the podcast, the Champaign Papis Podcast.
That's right.
And as always, let's get into football, Joseph.
And as always, as I said a week ago, when the Poppies go up, when the Poppies go down, the Poppies go down together. We'll run it back. When the Poppies go down, we go down together.
But
when the Poppies go up, we go up together.
Yee, let's fucking go.
You are looking at the two highest scoring players of Week 3 in our fantasy league. Marco, you had a strong showcase against a very big contender in our league, Adrian.
Yep. Adrian was a champ last year. I was a champ in my league last year.
It was champ versus champ.
And I got the better of him. I beat him by a pretty significant amount. I had 155. I think he had like 120.
Yeah, in our books right here, we have 152.6 to 122.7.
Yep, there you
go.
So
a big 30-point dub. You got helped out a lot by your guy, Devontae Adams. DK Metcalf finally has himself a week.
Finally, man. George Kittle, too. George Kittle had 17.8 points. He did his thing.
So it's kind of awkward asking a question like this when you have a week like that, but how are you feeling about your team right now?
I feel pretty solid about my team. The thing that makes me very hopeful about it is, so I picked up, between last podcast and this podcast, I picked up David Montgomery. David Montgomery has now been a new addition to the team.
It actually happened as soon as we stopped recording last week.
Yeah, literally at the very end of that podcast, I checked my phone and I had received that trade offer, but I didn't go through with it until the end of the podcast because I wanted to get my attention to this. So David Montgomery's on the team, and he had a measly 7 or 9 points. I don't remember exactly how much it was. So the fact that he didn't do too hot,
right,
and I still won by that amount, makes me very hopeful.
Bears got walloped.
Yeah, and then Bears are playing Detroit this week. So it should be a big honor for him.
Yep.
And they had Kareem Hunt had 23 points off the bench. Cole Beasley had 21 on my bench too.
Huge.
So I feel pretty good with the team right now. I feel pretty good.
So as we said, Marco
scored
152.6. Yep. And that's a very good fantasy week in your typical ESPN league. Except when you have a guy like the Bills Mafia Don.
Yeah, unless you have Joe Long as a GM.
177.72. I played the worst scorer in our league this week. A lot of them have him as worst in the league.
Yeah.
In general right now. He scored 66.18. He was carried by the Ravens with Lamar and Mark Andrews being his top two scorers. But Josh Allen has a QB1 week. That's finally what I wanted to see. I was not stressing about him, but it's just nice to see him do more than just above average. He's still great. I want to shout out the Los Angeles Chargers. They are going to carry me to his fantasy championship this year. Austin Eckler is now RB5 in fantasy.
Yep.
Despite not doing anything too crazy so far this season. Mike Williams, a risky draft pick. I didn't like him any other year in fantasy.
I didn't like him, yeah.
I drafted him simply because I needed a receiver in the draft. Justin Herbert's going to launch that bitch. He has himself a week. He's now wide receiver 2. Aaron Jones, he's still running back 2 in the league. Another strong week, even though he was barely included because it was Devontae's week. As you predicted, you did predict it was going to be a Devontae week because Aaron Jones had his last week. Jamar did his thing again. Tyler Higbee has himself a lot. Juju was in the lineup and gets hurt, so you know what? Shout out to him. I hope he's healthy.
So that's why, if I'm you right now and I'm looking at this shit, Juju got hurt. He only had 6 points before he went out. So he had 177 and that, and with only Juju doing that amount, so
his replacement that I was actually debating before the week started. I was debating putting Jacoby Myers in over him.
Okay.
I didn't do it because we were playing New Orleans, and New Orleans has a good defense.
Yeah.
He got 18.4, so I was close to having a 190-point week.
Yeah.
Which is a great feeling.
That is always a great feeling. So
I'm still trying to trade for a consistent wide receiver 1. I don't think Mike Williams is going to finish wide receiver 2 in fantasy football.
I mean, look, if he keeps playing the way he's playing, he could surprise us. Because a lot of the thing is, there's a lot of kind of shake-up right now in the top players at each position. For example, if you would have said 3 years ago, Ezekiel Elliott, Saquon Barkley aren't up there. There's just so much going on that, especially now that Justin Herbert's at QB, I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Williams finishes a top 20 wide receiver.
I think he will, but I still want a guy who's going to finish near the top 5, definitely top 10. Jamar Chase is number 11. I don't think he stays that high. Yeah, I'm a big guy where it's I believe in my guys now. I would love to have Jamar at flex and Mike Williams at wide receiver 2. I think that's a deadly lineup. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to trade for a wide receiver 1, a lock-in.
Yeah.
I still think Mike Williams, right now I'll say it. I saw it, Matthew Berry and all them were talking about it. You know, you get the fantasy.
Yeah, I get all that shit, yeah.
They were saying Mike Williams is now a set him and forget it. play him and forget it.
I mean, he is. He's gonna be look. Last week he dropped 33.2, but he's gonna be getting solid targets, and each reception is a point already. Yep. And plus, there's always 10 yards. You're getting 2 points each time. With a pass-heavy offense, the one they have there, even though Austin Eckler's still eating too, Mike Williams should be poised for a big year. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think. Yep. After these first 3 weeks.
My thing is, I think if I pair him currently, I will say right now, last week it was Chris Godwin. That trade did not go through. I've been trying to get Justin Jefferson. That's not going to happen. I go for deadly trades here, and right now, this is a trade that people watching this podcast, if you play fantasy football, go try to make in your league, especially if it's in my scenario. I'm a strong team. I have a lot of bench depth.
I know exactly where you're going with this, yeah.
Robert's a weak team. Robert's 0-3. He's desperate. He needs guys who are going to score now. A.J. Brown is one of my favorite receivers. I had him in fantasy last year.
You watch Fantasy Focus Football on ESPN, don't you?
Huh? I do.
I do too. That's
I am stealing some of their mojo, but I have to say it because it's true. You're going to see it all over TikTok.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's crazy because you hear these scenarios all the time, but it actually applies in our league. It actually
applies in our league.
For example, I know it's kind of weird because we're both in conversations with Robert.
For A.J. Brown.
Right? Because we're both 2-1 teams. Honestly, like I said, if he ends up on your team, I don't want to say I could care less, but I made him an offer because I'm not too worried. I have 2 of the top 20 wide receivers in the league.
Right.
My team's in a pretty solid spot right now. If anything, I would want a running back. So
this is true.
So that's why there's deals brewing there.
So if the one he's talking about, the one he's alluding to, we're not going to get too specific into ours because at a certain point, people stop caring about the specifics of it.
Yep.
But if that trade happens, it will be on our segment next week because it will be a blockbuster trade. It will involve, let's just say, a first-round pick, so we don't give too much information away.
Yeah.
But it'll be a pretty big trade.
Well, like I said, we'll see how it goes.
The way he talked about A.J. Brown was exactly the way Pro Football Focus talked about it. They said he literally said, I want receivers who are going to get me points. Yeah. He's in a spot where he just wants to build a team that's going to be able to compete.
Because at this point, because the thing is, too, he has a lot of other players who went down. I know his running backs are pretty weak.
This is the guy, for anybody who's keeping track, this is the one who traded me Juju, Tyler Boyd, and James White for Myles Gaskin and Le'Veon Bell. So he's not necessarily the best GM, but he's getting to the point where he realized his team is no longer...
Right now, at wide receiver 1 and 2, he has A.J. Green and Sammy Watkins. Those are his 2 best wide receivers.
Say those names again.
A.J. Green
Yeah.
and Sammy Watkins.
If this was 2014, fire.
Yeah, because when A.J. Green was the Cincinnati Bengals and Andy Dalton was starting on the rock, and Sammy Watkins has always been a consistent player. But in this day and age, for them to be your 2 starting wide receivers...
I love you, Robert, but people need content, and this is where we're at right now.
Yeah, so this is pretty insane.
He does have A.J. and Antonio on the bench. He has the 2 Brown brothers as...
A.J. Brown and Antonio Brown, yep.
He was when he played. He started K.J. Osborne against me last week. He started Delvin Cook despite him being out, so...
Yeah. So, yeah, he's had a tough string of events, and he just needs players right now, if anything.
He definitely does need players. In terms of getting players, he can get them from the 2-3 deepest people, which are me, you, and James.
Yeah,
James is who you're playing this week. For anybody who can recall, James has been a highest scoring player before. He has been consistently a top scorer.
Yeah, he's consistently been at the top of the league.
You are looking at 2 of the top 3 projected for the week, with James being the 3rd.
Yeah, so I know... James currently is projected being the number 1 overall scoring offense this week, and I am 0.7 points behind them.
Right. Huge matchup.
So he's projected at 133. I'm projected 132.3. And that number keeps jumping back and forth. This morning, I was projected to win, and now he's projected to win. So it's going to keep going back and forth like that. And then obviously, like he alluded to, he's going to be projected 131.4, which in fantasy is pretty fucking solid.
For projection, is pretty high.
Yeah, for a projection, that's pretty fucking high.
Speaking of projections, the one thing that's been bouncing around as we kind of get towards the end of our fantasy thing here, we always like to look forward. And as we told you before, our initial rankings weren't necessarily... Well, yours was pretty good. You started off ranked 2nd projected. You're still there. As early as this morning, though. I looked at it this morning, and it was different. 1. You were at 1. Yeah. James was at 2, and I was at 3, meaning I jumped all the way from 10th to 3rd. So Gibby's still been sticking around that 4th spot, which I don't get. He's now back up to 3rd.
Yeah. But see, that's why I was confused too, because all right, me, James, switch 1 and 2, cool, but you went from being number 3 to being number 6, and you haven't made any changes in your team.
Nope.
So that's why I was pretty confused about that. If anything, you should still... I don't know what ESPN... Does ESPN know something that we don't?
The one thing that we do have to highlight, we love you, except in fantasy. You've dropped from the 1st ranked spot to the 8th. Adrian Aviles is currently blowing up his team. He has Tyreek Hill on the block.
Yeah, in the group
he's the one who traded Stephon Diggs a week ago. He has dropped from 1st to 8th. He's the only big down tick right now, along with Team Bahia, who lost Christian McCaffrey. That's not really something you can plan for.
That's crazy. Elkin, honestly, I feel bad for Elkin.
He's the one that gave you David Montgomery.
Yeah, he gave me David Montgomery for
Darrell Henderson and Zach Moss this week against me. Mm-hmm. He's playing me this week.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's going to be tough for him because, I mean, losing Christian McCaffrey is fucking tough. And Julio Jones is potentially out for this game,
Julio Jones is potentially out. He's got Keenan Allen, so Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are going to get pretty much the same amount of points.
Yeah, but he doesn't have much depth now. Like,
no, I know, that's true.
So,
I've been trying to get a...
Like, we are in our very first or second episode, we talked how, like, Elkin is fucking one of the, like, right now, at that moment in time,
Week 1, he was the highest scorer.
Yeah, exactly. So we expected him to be, like, a top 3, top 5 contender all year long. But with this injury...
And that trade.
And the trade that he made with me, which kind of, like...
Deebo Samuel helps out the Julio Jones facts, but your running backs are now Darrell Henderson and Zach Moss after being David Montgomery and Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
It's 2 different ballgames.
So, yeah. Well, that's going to be tough for it. But we are coming to the end of this segment. The camera should be shutting off any moment now. So...
We're going to go into football. We're going to get our buddy Gibby back in here, and we're going to do what we do.
So Hernandez.
Click on the next video. We still do transitions because we just think it's more fun. But
yeah, facts.
Click on the next video. Enjoy.
All right. See you guys.